Hello everyone. I am doing something different in my video today, and hopefully in some of my videos in the future. I decided to challenge myself, and the way I'm going to do that is by creating what I'm calling product prompts. And I looked all over online. I didn't see any kind of lists anywhere. I was looking on Pinterest trying to find like just a list of scrapbooking products to use, and I couldn't find one. So I ended up having to kind of try to come up with one on my own, and it's this whole list that ranges from using modeling paste to just simple things like, okay, it's going to be stickers, or I don't remember what all of them were. But anyway, so I set three rules for myself in this challenge. One, it's that I'm going to pick three different products, but they're randomly generated. So I'm just going to stick them on a cup and like randomly pick out three different products. The second rule is that I want to try to use that product in a new way. And the third rule is that there's no passing on whatever product comes up. So that's the challenge that I'm setting for myself, and I guess we will see where or how well I do at this. I'm thinking that it would be kind of fun to do it going forward, but again, if it becomes too much, well, I don't know. If it becomes not fun or too much of a challenge to do it all the time, then I'll probably end up passing on it. But for now, I thought it would be kind of a fun thing to incorporate and see how it goes. So I'm going to do that. This layout is the first one I'm going to do that on, and I will show you the products that I'm going to use later. But right now I'm adding some photos because I'm going to make this a flip-up page. I wanted to put more than the two photos on the page, but I didn't want them to overwhelm the whole layout. So I'm going to make these little flip-up ways of viewing the photos underneath. Now that I've matted all my photos down, then I have gone ahead and put the hinges on the paper, and I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of the photos on the layout. When you're doing a flip-up page like this, then you're going to have to cut slits into the page protector so that you can actually flip the stuff up. Otherwise it would just be underneath and nobody would even know it was there. At the moment, I am just kind of playing with all of the hinges, making sure that they get a little bit worn in and that the photos all kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, like line up and that the mats lay down. Then I am going to go on to picking out the paper that I want to use. The two lines that I use in this are Simple Stories, the Frankie and Friends, specifically the Trick or Treat paper, and then Halloween Magic by Bella Boulevard. And I'm guessing that the polka dotted one is the Simple Stories, and that the skull one that you'll see me using in a moment is Bella Boulevard. I'm also using Black Soot Distress ink to to ink all the edges. So you see me just use my ATG gun to glue down the mat, and then I'm also using it to glue down this other photo mat inside, and that is going to be where I put my journaling later. I'm also going to pull out some Jelly Bean Soup purple glitter chipboard letters, and I'm going to spell out the title, which is supposed to be Slenderman, but I missed putting an N on there. So later on I have to go back and pull up all of those letters, which of course messes up the paper. So I had to figure out a way to fix that, so I ended up just cutting another piece of the cardstock, inking around the edges, and gluing it down with the correct title on it. These stickers that I'm using right now are some old ones from Martha Stewart, and they're just spiders. Okay, so I'm going to pull out some washi tape and kind of play with that a little bit, and I've gotten all of this way without pulling out the prompts that I was talking about or discussing wanting to do, and so I am going to pull them out fairly quickly or fairly soon. I knew I wanted to use this big skull as well. It's like a grunge board from Tim Holtz. I've had it for a really long time, and I also wanted to use that wood veneer that says 31. I, at this point, decided I'm going to put the washi tape on the other side, and that's where I'll end up putting that skull. Now that I'm done kind of playing with that, I'm going to move on to going ahead and picking out the three prompts. And so this is how I just cut them all into strips and stuck them in a cup, and we'll just randomly pull them out. So the three that came up on here were transparencies, modeling paste, and dewdrops, which I have not used in a long time, so I had to get creative. This is what I decided to do as far as the transparency. I am just putting alcohol ink on it, and I am going to use it. At this point I'm not completely sure, but I'm thinking I'm just going to stamp on it or something like that to use it on the layout. From there, I move right into getting out the modeling paste. This one was fairly easy, and I knew what I wanted to do with it right off, right as soon as I seen it come up, which was that I was going to change it to black, and then I was going to put it over the skull to change the color of the skull and to add texture to it. To change the color of the modeling paste, I am just going to use black acrylic paint, and I'm going to add a couple of added a couple times basically to get it to where it's a darker, it kind of looks gray in here, like a dark gray. Once it dried though, it did come out to where it pretty much just looked black, which is what I was going for. So right here you get a brief glimpse of where my thoughts are going with that transparency, which is to make it the eyes of the skull once I get this all done. I'm going to go ahead now though and put the modeling paste on the grunge board skull, and I'm not trying to be neat about this at all. I wanted it to be somewhat textured, which was the whole point using the modeling paste to begin with. Once I get that down, then I'm going to go ahead and pull this up and set it aside so that it can dry. Moving on now to the wood veneer, I pulled out some purple distress stain thinking that I wanted to use that on it, and it was not dark enough. It would not make it a dark enough purple for me. So then I pull out this black acrylic paint, which I've already got on my desk, obviously, and decide to just go ahead and paint the 31 black, and I'm going to get out my heating gun and dry that off, or dry it anyway. Whenever I do that on that type of mat, then the mat bubbles up, and so in the past my mat ended up extremely distorted, so now whenever I do that I end up putting my hand on it underneath to try to get it to lay flat again. After I was done with the wood paint, then I went ahead and pulled out some of, what is it? It's basically like Versamark, but it's in the dauber. It's by Ranger, and I put that on there, and I'm very surprised that I did this in this order. I'm thinking maybe I got the video clips mixed up because I'm going to emboss that 31, but in here I went ahead and moved on to the dewdrops, and on those I'm putting the alcohol ink, which is the same thing that I used on the transparency. And now you see me going back to distressing or embossing the 31. I'm guessing I didn't do it in that order because it just wouldn't have made sense. And this is where I get smart and take up the cutting mat and put it down on the Heidi Spot mat instead to emboss it so that it doesn't have that effect where it gets all distorted. Apparently I just really wanted this to be purple because I'm realizing that I painted it black and then I'm embossing it with purple. So now I am moving on to stamping on the transparency with the StazOn ink because that's the type of ink that will work on transparencies. And I don't think I have a clear plan yet on what I'm going to do with these, other than the couple of ideas that I thought, which was stamping on it and then maybe using it under the eyes on the skull. So now I have the dewdrops, and I am going to place them around randomly. I'm just basically using the dewdrops almost like enamel dots, and they're the color that I changed them to with the alcohol inks. I'm going to use glossy accents to glue those down, obviously because they're somewhat clear, and that will help them not pick up some other weird white color or whatever. I wonder if you could use regular glue that dries clear on that. I've never tried it. I've always used glossy accents. Now I'm pulling out some enamel stars in green and purple, and I am just gonna scatter them around on the layout. I'm gonna put one on the wood veneer and then a few underneath, and I think that those are the only places actually that I do put those. At this point, I am going to move on to the skull. And this thing gets a little bit messed up. I like the way it looks right now without the eyes, but because I have to use the transparency on here someplace, then I decide to go ahead and make the eyes of the skull purple. Once I decided to make them purple, then I thought, oh, well, I'll put these enamel stars in there as well, and then I'll just go ahead and fill that all the way up with glossy accents. And before it dried, then the glossy accents, somehow I ended up getting it onto the black part of the skull. So you'll see that in the end photos. I'm not completely disappointed with the way this turned out. It's kind of cute. So it's okay. I'm not, completely upset by it or anything like that. I did put the transparency that says spooky to the right, and it's even in the photos, but afterwards and seeing the photos and everything, I decided that I didn't like it there, and so I've since taken it off and it's not there anymore. It does not have a home on the page any longer. But technically, I did use the transparencies, so I'm okay with that. I followed all my rules. Alright, thanks for watching. Bye.